Hi everyone, Lisa from the Balance Team, Prescott, Arizona. Thanks for tuning in. We all see the headlines on social media lately about mortgage rates, inflation, the housing market, foreclosures, and much more. I'll answer the biggest questions in housing today in the next couple of videos, and I hope you keep tuning in. First, we keep hearing, will mortgage rates rise? As realtors, we hear this question over and over, and I'm sure you do too, whether it's on the news, in social media, or just in everyday conversation, that this year has truly been defined by rising mortgage rates, and this characterized the housing market in 2022. It's a drastically different place than it has been over the past couple of years, so let's start with a visual. This graphic says mortgage rates are rising this year, and without a doubt, it is shown here.
So what you can see is the Freddie Mac 30-year fixed rate starting in January of this year, going all the way through the latest release from last week, starting down at 3.2%, still hovering in January at that historically low level that we saw coming out of the pandemic. What's happened since then is that mortgage rates have risen drastically. In fact, the latest release from Freddie Mac shows the average 30-year fixed was 6.95% last Thursday, and the previous week, rates ticked up to over 7%. So this has been a dramatic rise in rates, and it has certainly caused a cool down in the housing market. Rates have actually more than doubled this calendar year, which has never happened before in a year's time. So it really has shifted perspective and truly what people can afford in the housing market today. Freddie Mac says U.S. 30-year fixed mortgage rates have increased 3.83 percentage points since the end of last year. That's the biggest year-to-date increase in over 50 years. So, in the 50 years of this metric being calculated, Freddie Mac has been tracking 30-year fixed mortgage rates, and they have jumped the most that we've ever seen. So, of course, this is causing people to pause their plans and say, I'm going to wait this out and see what happens. Why is this happening? Well, it's all about inflation. So the Federal Reserve has been making moves to try and lower inflation. And while we know that the Federal Reserve does not control the mortgage rates, they are increasing their federal fund rates and making moves to slow the economy. And the housing market is a big part of the economy. And of course, as they aim to slow the economy, mortgage rates are forced to respond. Information from Realtor.com says with inflation still running at 40-year highs and the Fed's continuing to make the moves to lower inflation, mortgage rates will experience upward pressure through the end of 2022. Mark Fleming from First American says mortgage rates are expected to continue to drift higher over the coming months. And though much of the rapid increase in rates is likely behind us, the upward pressure continues as the Feds try to slow the economy. Rates will remain high, but as soon as we start to listen to the experts, it's more likely that we're going to see a recession over the next 12 months. The latest release in October was that 60% of economists surveyed said that a recession is around the corner. And it makes people wonder what this means. And what does this mean for the housing market? So that brings us to the next big question. What are the experts saying about home prices? That's really the biggest question that we should be asking, is what happens to the housing market in times of recession? Well, while we don't know exactly what's going to happen going forward, we certainly can learn from what's happened in the past. And a recession does not mean falling prices. So the next graph really simplifies and effectively shows that in 4 of the last 6 recessions, home prices have actually increased. Now that does not mean that home prices increase every time there's a recession. You can see the 2 times where home values went down, and of course we all remember 2008, and that's the one that sparks the fear. We have to remember that 2008 was a vastly different market. Fundamentals of the housing market were so different, and homeowners didn't have the equity that they have today. Lending standards are completely different today than in 2008. Lending standards are much more stringent, and buyers must be well qualified to purchase a home. Foreclosures due to poor lending standards caused home prices to drop dramatically, but that's not the environment that we're talking about today. If you look at these recessions, it means falling mortgage rates is what we have seen in each of those moments in time during those recessionary times, and that mortgage rates have actually come down when we had a recession in this country. So again, we can learn a lot from history. It doesn't always inform exactly where we go, but as we hear about, the Fed's trying to slow the economy, and where are mortgage rates today is what's going to happen. Experts forecast and then reforecast as they're talking about prices through the rest of the year, and it's next year, and they're looking at all the market dynamics that go into prices. But you have to understand, economists look at the national picture, not so much the local picture of where you live. Redfin says for those folks who are eagerly awaiting for a home price crash, you'll have to keep waiting, even though demand is pulling back and supply is reducing as well, keeping downward pressure on prices in the short run. So what does this mean? Well, homes are staying on the market longer. We're seeing an influx of new inventory, but there's still pressure on prices. There's still more buyers than sellers in the market, so it's still a seller's market right now, but certainly giving more opportunities to buyers than they had at the beginning of the year. We like to look at all of these and kind of average them out because you can get a full picture that way. And when you look at some up, some down, we're really talking about neutral or flat home price appreciation. Maybe a little up, maybe a little down. This becomes even more important as you look at your local market. For instance, on the West Coast, we saw prices accelerate even faster than most other markets. Experts look at it from a little bit of a different view, but we are seeing a deceleration in prices in many markets. We're still seeing prices rise, like here in Prescott, as there are more buyers than sellers out there, and so that is keeping upward pressure on home prices, but certainly it is kind of a little up and down. The big banks are calling for home prices to depreciate next year, and you'll probably see this in the media, and it starts to get really confusing when you'll see different forecasts for home prices. But let's keep in mind, a lot of them tend to follow some of the more publicly traded builders. We see a different dynamic with existing homes. So as we follow the entities that, really have more of a focus on existing home sales, we're seeing probably a little bit more flat or neutral appreciation. But what they all agree on is going into 2024 will be at more normal levels of price. 2023 might be a bit rocky, and then returning to more normal levels of home price appreciation. And keep in mind, we're talking about coming off of a 20% year-over-year home price increase in the last couple of years. We still have an undersupply of inventory, and there's a lot happening in the housing market that may make the upcoming year a little bit different than it's been over the frenzy of the past 2 years. But we knew that frenzy was not sustainable. We knew it needed to shift, and that's exactly where we are today. But we're not talking about 5 years of continued depreciation. We're talking about returning to more levels of appreciation in 2024. So that leads to our next big question. Will there be a wave of foreclosures? Tune in to the next video and find out.
If you like our videos about Prescott and want to see more, don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Prescott Real Estate and Living. Ready to search for your Prescott home? Go to buyprescottarizona.com. I hope I've answered a couple questions you and others have had about the housing market. Our next video will cover another big question in real estate, and that is, will there be a wave of foreclosures? Tune in later this week for that informational video. Again, thanks for tuning in, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye-bye.